Man trauma, what is that?
Yes. Well, let's go ahead and break down the scientific portion of it first in true Mo fashion. So when the sperm comes out of the scrotum and goes through the canal and actually gives a spark of light to the egg, there is a marker that they can transfer from father to son to define male trauma, and that's using epigenetics. Okay. So this particular marker doesn't affect the gene, it alters it, and it alters a specific gene in the Y chromosome. Okay. An example of that is if you had a prisoner of war, POW, and he had children before he became a POW, right? Then they tested those children. The children that he had after the fact of him being a POW were 11% more likely to commit suicide and have mental illness issues. So with that being said, that particular genetic marker through epigenetics is transferred to the male, and they start to have different kinds of effects.
Okay.
One of them is PTSD.
Gotcha.
Men can transfer post-traumatic stress disorder through sperm into the egg of their male sons. It can look in forms of violent, having episodes of traumatic violent behaviors, being triggered by certain sounds, it's auditory and visual.
Okay.
They can have a pre-sensitivity toward yelling, raising of the voice, things of this nature as children. And it even furthers as they grow into their adulthood. Another issue that can be transferred through that particular genetic marker is intimacy issues. Wow. With their partner. Also having difficulty disclosing any issues that they may have or things that they're experiencing. They may also have issues with being lonely and feeling abandoned, rejected, similar to womb trauma.
Right.
They also have a tendency to have more medical trauma than other individuals who their fathers didn't have that particular genetic marker transitioned over through the sperm into that male child.
So how aware is society about this thing called man trauma? So is it the same as mental health issues?
Naturally, people would say it would be mental health issues. I think it's more of a societal issue and a spiritual issue.
Okay.
Reason being, there's a term called alexithymia, and that just means a suppression of emotional expression. Little boys today, in the year 2020, are still suffering from that. So many people in the multitude of communities will tell a little boy if he gets his feelings hurt, or if he falls down the steps, or if he was in a fight and dealing with a bully, man up, stop crying. Boys don't do that. Men don't do that. And that can cause alexithymia to develop, which further enhance whatever genetic marker, right? That genetic marker on that Y chromosome to be exasperated. So it can enhance or perpetuate the PTSD portion.
Gotcha.
It can perpetuate the intimacy and the lack thereof as far as being open and willing to discuss what's going on with their issues with their partner. It can perpetuate, not wanting to go to the doctor. A lot of men suffer from that. They wait to the last minute to go seek medical attention. And in the United States of America, I understand, but that's also something that's transferred through male trauma from father to son in that particular marker because of past experiences with experimentation on the African males here in America, African American males here with the Tuskegee experiment. These are things that we know about. Those markers transfer from male to male through the bloodline. So we have to be very cognitive as women when we're dealing with our sons not to perpetuate or exude alexithymia in our relationships with our sons. Because men do need to verbalize the issues that they're having. They need to release that in a very healthy way. Now, I'm not talking about the little boy who cries all the time. If you have a son that is exuding those behaviors, it could be that altered Y chromosome that was transferred from his father to him. So we have to be cognitive of those behaviors and be mindful of the words that we're using when we're dealing with our males as they're developing and growing, so that we're not perpetuating any other types of trauma that they're already experiencing. So a lot of people know they're not aware, just as well as a lot of women weren't aware of womb trauma. A lot of men are not aware that they can pass trauma through the bloodline genetically to their sons.
It sounds like the actual man trauma, the trauma is the transfer of habit. Like you expressed evidence of a difference as prisoner of war to someone who's just been taught to kind of remain closed in and not express their feelings.
Absolutely.
But it's the habit as a result of those things that that men pass on to their sons through their sperm. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So unlike women, when it's through the mitochondrial DNA, ours is actually transmitted and altered and imprinted. With men, it's the personality traits that's transmitted and altered. So it's nothing physical, it's all mental with them. Gotcha. And it's important, especially now in the year of 2020, when we're being inundated with images on the TV of black males being executed, whether it's by an authoritative type of figure like the police, or it could be something that's communal based, or if you just have a citizen who wants to be a vigilante and feel as though they don't belong in a particular neighborhood. Those images can cause that marker to be activated because it was already altered before they were it came out of the womb. So when they're in their gestation period, all of these images, all of the negative commentary that we're hearing for the males in this country, it could trigger that onset of that personality trait that was altered from the sperm to the egg and now to the adult.
Do the kinds of man trauma vary from ethnicity group to another?
Yes. It depends on, I'm going to specifically talk about the most severe cases. Okay. And the most severe case of man trauma is in the African genotype. African American people here in the United States suffer from the most severe cases of man trauma. Our young men and our boys and our males are plagued with a lot of mental health issues, whether it be depression, whether it be personality disorders, whether it be anger management, whether it be suicidal tendencies, whether it be poor eating habits, whether it be sexual aggressive acts that have happened to them. Our men are plagued with a lot of those things that can trigger the alteration that occurred in that Y chromosome. Males are 30% of the whole collective of sexual aggressive acts. 30% of those take place with young boys and young men. They don't talk about that. Unlike women, when we're affected from our trauma, when we have a physical or verbal, men are blessed with the ability to detach themselves, but it manifests in a different way.
It is a blessing. Coming from a woman, it's just like, oh my gosh, we have to try to master the art. But yeah, it's definitely something that's a lot more innate in them than it is in us. Is it a cure?
The cure is educating yourself. The cure is not being scared to open up and to actually seek help. The cure is letting someone who's in your support system, if you have one, know that everything isn't okay. The cure is if your feelings is hurt, if your heart was broken, if someone in your family transitioned, if you are confused about things in your life, it is okay to cry. It's okay to express that something is going on. That's not a form of weakness. That's actually a form of strength. But again, because society stresses the fact that little boys, when they're young, they're not supposed to cry, they're supposed to hold the world on their shoulders, they grow up in a dissociative type of reality, which ultimately affects their lives and in turn affects their relationships, whether it be with their partners, their parents, their friends. It takes a toll.
Can women get man trauma? I know I asked this in womb trauma, but can women suffer from man trauma, being as though we are the ones who host the men?
No, we cannot suffer from man trauma because it's specifically for the Y chromosome. Women have XX, men have XY. So the male trauma is specifically to the Y chromosome, and that's the genotype that gets altered, that chromosome.
So there's no prevention, it sounds like.
The prevention is, it starts with the parents, ultimately.
Starts at home.
It starts at home, people, just like with the womb trauma. It starts at home, and understanding and knowing that these things exist. It exists in our community, it exists in our society, and just because this perpetuation of a strong male 1,000 times a day is something that has been handed down from generation to generation, ultimately that is not true. That's not the case, and it's not healthy. It is okay for a man to express his feelings. What's not okay is for men to whine. But it is okay for a male to express his frustrations and to do it in a very safe space, in a space that he feels is comfortable. And women, we can't nag 50,000 times in a day, okay? If your man is going through something, he may not be ignoring you. He may not have the ability to connect to you on that way due to male trauma.
He's expressing his man trauma, ladies.
Yes.